So, get this, the Senate finally blinked.
Yeah, and it wasn't over a budget or some minor bill. They actually voted to end the emergency status Trump used to impose tariffs on Canada.
50 to 46. 4 Republicans broke ranks. McConnell, Murkowski, Collins, and Rand Paul.
When Mitch McConnell starts defending free trade, you know the pain's getting personal.
It's only symbolic for now, but it is the first crack that we've seen in years.
Yeah, because those tariffs on Canada, we know they weren't about an emergency or any policy. They were about control. And this week, even his own party said enough.
So let's break down what really happened. The Senate voted to end the national emergency that Trump declared to justify tariffs on Canadian imports.
So 4 Republicans joined all the Democrats. But here's the thing. We know they didn't erase the tariffs because the House still has to act and Trump has the final say as president. But the message is clear. Trump's control is slipping a bit.
Now, these tariffs started back in January when Trump claimed Canada had a fentanyl crisis. He said traffickers were flooding over the northern border.
But the facts didn't back it up. Fewer than 50 pounds of fentanyl were seized at the border last year. And that's a fraction of what the U.S. seizes every month at its southern border.
But he called it an emergency so that he could use it to justify tariffs. So what did Canada do? Well, we strengthened border patrols, we created a task force, and even appointed a fentanyl czar to stop the political pressure.
But none of that worked, and he turned that fabricated emergency into tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and autos using national security as an excuse.
And then last week, after Ontario aired that Reagan ad during the World Series, you know, the one reminding Americans that tariffs hurt American jobs and can trigger a depression? Well then, he halted trade talks and raised tariffs another 10% out of spite.
It goes to show it was never about security or fairness. It was about control and headlines.
The Senate vote shows that even his own party is starting to see the cost to farmers, manufacturers, and border states.
So the tariffs are still in place, but the politics has shifted. The aura of untouchability is gone.
And while senators were pretending everything was under control, Trump decided to change the subject with a post that shook the entire world.
Yeah, on Truth Social, he wrote, and we're quoting directly, "The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. Because of other countries' testing programs, we have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump."
Now, the U.S. hasn't conducted a nuclear test since 1992, the end of the Cold War. For more than 30 years, Republican and Democrat presidents kept that moratorium in place.
It's also part of an international ban. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, it forbids any nuclear explosions. Almost every major power, including the U.S., Russia, and China, have followed it. Until now.
And Trump dropped that statement just moments before meeting China's president, Xi Jinping, in Busan, South Korea. He walked into trade talks waving a virtual mushroom cloud.
The Pentagon wasn't ready, Russia was blindsided, and China's foreign ministry publicly urged the U.S. to earnestly uphold its obligations under the treaty and protect global stability.
So, why did he do it? He needed a headline, and nuclear weapons get attention. The testing order wasn't about defense, it was about distraction. Trump is willing to tear up decades of stability to prove that he's still the toughest guy in the room.
Arms control experts say it will take at least 3 years, thank God, and billions of dollars to restart testing in Nevada. There's no facility, no staff, and no reason to do it other than ego.
It's reckless, right? He claims he's balancing with China and Russia, but really he's undermining the very treaty that keeps those powers in check.
But Xi didn't bite. China's position is steady. They won't use nuclear weapons first, and they'll keep their arsenal minimal for deterrence.
Trump's response was the exact opposite. More weapons, more tests, more noise. It screamed insecurity, not strength. the so-called 12 out of 10 meeting produced nothing new. No real trade deal, just a one-year truce.
Beijing agreed to buy soybeans again and slow exports of fentanyl precursors. And Trump, he halved one tariff and promised reciprocal visits. But that's it. No technology breakthrough, no structural reform, no win that he could sell at home. And that's the pattern. When diplomacy falters, he reaches for the loudest button on the panel.
The rest of the world saw a president isolated and grasping for headlines. Canada saw something else, a wake-up call.
Because if Washington wants to relive the Cold War, then Canada needs to prepare for the next one on its own terms.
Because for Canada, this isn't just another Trump outburst. It's a warning shot. We're his northern neighbor, and if he's dusting off Cold War rhetoric, we're suddenly back in range.
The last thing this world needs is another arms race, especially one started by a man so desperate for attention.
We aren't in the same position we were back in the 90s. Back then, the Cold War was ending. Now we're watching a man who's been threatening our sovereignty for months, using tariffs, trade bans, and political pressure to try and break us down economically.
He's been building this step by step. First, the fake fentanyl crisis, then the tariffs, then his ambassador tearing up diplomatic ties in Ottawa. Now, nuclear tests.
We've joked for years about him having the nuclear codes. Now, he's acting on it. And Canada's caught in the middle of a global power play that we didn't ask for.
It's scary because it's not just bluster anymore. It's escalation. And we're the neighbor standing next to the guy lighting fireworks in a gas station.
Canada's suddenly the South Korea to his North Korea, living beside the instability, staying alert, and doubling down on our own defense.
Which is exactly why Carney's actions matter right now. Because while Trump flexes for attention, Canada's quietly preparing for the future. If Washington wants to relive the Cold War, we prepare for the next one on our terms. Because the Trump administration is all about chaos. They want to disrupt our lives, even in diplomacy.
Yep, we talked about our buddy Pete Hoekstra yesterday, and you can watch that video in the links below. But for anyone who's been living under a rock for the past week, here's the short version.
The U.S. ambassador to Canada, the guy who's supposed to have grace and diplomacy. He decided diplomacy meant yelling at Ontario's trade rep in front of 200 people.
A profanity-filled tirade directed at Ontario's trade representative, David Patterson.
Right. The same guy who scolded Canada saying we burnt bridges when it's the U.S. that's been bullying us for 10 months. And he actually said he doesn't like our elbows up attitude.
Listen, Pete, Canadians don't want you here. You're here at the pleasure of our Prime Minister, and that means you can be asked to leave just as easily as you were invited.
Exactly. If an ambassador becomes a liability, Canada can request that Washington recall him. It's called being declared a persona non grata. It's diplomatic language for pack your bags, Pete.
Get out of there. And at least Doug Ford told him to apologize the next day, calling the behavior unbecoming of an ambassador.
We don't need some loud mouthpiece and a failed government official whose only role is to echo Trump's talking points. He's just another loyalist placed here to stir up conflict.
Our ambassador's job is to keep relations steady, not throw tantrums like Trump. If he can't do that, then he should be sent home.
And his small outburst, it's a small story compared to this nuclear talk, but it's all connected because Trump's people are cracking and he's starting to lose control, so he has to create noise everywhere. Because noise replaces policy, and we're done entertaining it.
So while Trump was busy rebranding departments and reviving the Cold War, Prime Minister Mark Carney was in South Korea doing the opposite, building partnerships for the future.
He toured the Hanwha Ocean shipyards in Guje, the place where Canada's next generation of submarines could come from.
Carney was joined by Defense Minister David McGuinty and Vice Admiral Angus Topshee, the commander of the Royal Canadian Navy. Now, this wasn't a photo op. It was actually an inspection tour, part of Canada's plan to replace its aging Victoria-class subs. Only one of the old boats is fully operational.
So Hanwha's pitch is aggressive. 4 subs delivered by 2035 and 12 in total. They're pitching robotic welding, lithium-ion batteries, and 2 maintenance bases in Canada.
Now their German rival is offering something different, a NATO standardized fleet shared with Germany and Norway. That means common training, parts, and logistics across allied navies.
Either way, Canada's moving fast because the Arctic's not a theory anymore. It's the next front line, and our neighbor is knocking on our door.
Yep, it's one of the fastest moving procurement processes in modern Canadian history. And for good reason. With melting Arctic ice opening new shipping routes, our north is no longer remote. It's strategic.
And these aren't just boats. They're a signal to allies and adversaries that we're serious about the Arctic, our trade routes, and our independence. The Arctic is where defense meets economics. Whoever controls those routes controls future trade.
And unlike Trump, who equates power with volume, Carney's projecting it through capability, quiet strength backed by alliances.
South Korea isn't just a supplier. It's the world's second largest defense exporter to NATO after the US. And they're offering Canada more than submarines. They're offering co-production, jobs, and technology sharing.
And Carney's team even linked it to Canadians' broader industrial strategy. Lithium-ion manufacturing, LNG, aerospace, and critical minerals. It's diplomacy with a blueprint, not a slogan.
The message to Canadians is simple. While Trump plays nuclear roulette, we're building deterrence and independence.
It's a reminder that sovereignty isn't about isolation. It's about reliability. And reliability is becoming Canada's brand.
So let's hop on over to the ASEAN summit for a minute, where Trump was working the circuit for our camera time, while Mark Carney was doing the same lap for outcomes. He wasn't lobbying for headlines, but he was there to negotiate a free trade framework with Southeast Asia.
Canada committed to doubling its non-US exports. A bold plan given that we did $1.3 trillion with the US last year and just $261 billion with the Indo-Pacific.
That's huge. And Ottawa's also been lining up cooperation on supply chains and clean energy tech with Japan. We'll dig into the paperwork when it's public, but the through line is obvious. Less dependence on the US and more reliance with trusted partners.
He's also set to meet with China's President Xi Jinping at APEC tomorrow. Now that shows that we're not just satisfying our neighbors, we're shaping ties with global heavyweights. It's positioning Canada to be the stable North American partner in a year when the other one, he just keeps setting fires.
This is the kind of strategic diplomacy that lasts. While someone else tweets about bombs, Canada signs letters of intent on LNG, renewables, and supply chain partnerships. The ASEAN framework is moving. Singapore finance lanes are opening. South Korea for submarine and Japan for industrial cooperation. It's not flashy, but it's durable.
Well, let's call it what it is. We're building capability and credibility at the same time. That's how you attract capital, allies, and talent, and how you keep them.
Either way, it's not just about submarines. It's about showing we're serious about sovereignty, security, and trade routes.
All right, let's step back for a minute and look at the week. The Senate rebels against Trump's tariffs, his ambassador melts down in Ottawa, and Trump orders nuclear tests moments before meeting President Xi. And while all that's happening, Canada's Prime Minister is quietly creating opportunities across Asia.
Trump's government is all show, and it's dangerous. Trump didn't build American power. Decades of democracy and diplomacy did. He inherited the strongest military and economy on Earth, and he's been tearing at both of them for 10 months. If this is only month 10, what do the next 3 years look like?
But the good thing is, Carney's government is the opposite. Quiet work and measurable results. That's how you lead allies and calm markets.
Every time Trump creates chaos, Carney converts it into opportunity. The ASEAN deal, the South Korea partnerships, the upcoming meeting with President Xi, all proof that Canadian can lead without shouting.
Remember, this is how power actually shifts, not overnight, but in perception. Country by country, people are deciding who's steady and who is not.
For decades, the U.S. was the global anchor. Now the world's scanning for stability and seeing it north of the border.
And that's the real story here. Canada's not waiting to be rescued anymore. We're charting our own course.
The Senate vote exposed the cracks in Trump's control. His nuclear post proved the danger of it. And Carney's Asia tour showed the contrast. Steady, measured leadership.
It's why investors are shifting north, why allies are taking notes, and why Made in Canada is suddenly shorthand for reliability.
Trump's testing weapons, Canada's testing trust. Guess which one the world wants more of?
So, if you've had enough of the noise and you like this, hit subscribe and join the A-team and watch what happens when Canada leads.
And tell us what you think. Would you trust nuclear orders from a Nepo baby? Or defense contracts coming from a country that keeps its word?
I think the choice is pretty easy, right? And hey, if Pete Hoekstra's out there still watching, pack a bag, buddy. You're out of here.
So we'll see you next time. And remember, Canada is not backing down. We're the only ones that aren't. And the world is finally noticing.